A young woman named Linguistica was able to recognize a fundamental absence in her ability, fluency in English. She was 20, living in a vibrant, bustling Asian city, but felt an invisible barrier separating her from the global flow of information and opportunity. She realized that to truly achieve her dream of a high-level academic career perhaps abroad, she needed to acquire this language with absolute speed and efficiency. Her current situation was adequate, but Linguistica craved more. She worked as an assistant in a small local marketing agency, handling data and basic administration. Her income was low, but she was determined. She would need to absorb a vast amount of knowledge. "I need a modern approach," she muttered to herself, staring at her laptop screen. Traditional classroom instruction felt too slow and, frankly, a bit boring. Linguistica began her search. She scrolled across countless websites and online resources. She wanted a method that was active, immersive, and would directly affect her life. She refused to accept the idea that it was impossible to learn fast. She found a program called KeyTalk. It promised rapid, impactful learning through a combination of virtual reality simulations and intensive, personalized coaching. The cost was considerable, an expense that would require her to use nearly all her savings. "This is my chance," she thought, a spark of excitement mixed with anxiety. She clicked enroll. The first step was to contact her new advisor, a man named Mr. Mash. The KeyTalk administrator was ready to address her concerns. "Welcome, Linguistica." His voice was clear and confident through the video call. "Your ability to commit is your greatest asset. We will work on your overall performance. You'll need to adapt to a new routine. It will be intense." Linguistica nodded, her heart beating a little faster. "I understand. I want to be able to speak and write accurately and naturally." "Absolutely. Our goal is for you to be comfortable discussing complex topics from global affairs to academic debate in English. You will be fully immersed, acting and reacting, not just passively listening." She felt a rush of adrenaline. This was it. Her adventure was about to begin. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, taking a deep breath. Her future lay ahead. It was an unusual but thrilling beginning. She had to acknowledge that the task was huge, but she was ready to act. The following day, Linguistica received a large, flat box. Inside was her new device. The KeyTalk package also contained a comprehensive guide and an additional piece of equipment, a specialized headset designed to monitor her cognitive activity. She was excited, yet had a nervous flutter in her stomach. She logged onto the KeyTalk platform at exactly 9 a.m., ready to begin. The application took her through a brief tutorial, showing her the basic function of the KeyTalk headset. Once in, the digital world that unfolded before her was absolutely amazing. She was standing in a virtual apartment, with a view of the city that was beyond anything her real-life room could offer. Mr. Mash's avatar appeared. "Welcome to your virtual home. This place is designed to encourage constant English use," he explained. "Behind that door is your first challenge." Linguistica could hear a low, rhythmic sound coming from the other side. "Your first task is simple, but crucial," Mr. Mash continued. "Acquire the 3 items on your list: a bottle of water, a newspaper, and a blue pen. You must ask for them in English. Go ahead." Linguistica pushed the door open and found herself in a virtual grocery store. It looked realistic, from the bright color of the fruit to the stacks of cereal on the shelf. There was a virtual employee standing near the checkout. Linguistica's heart pounded. This was different from simply reciting phrases. This was real-time interaction. She walked toward the employee, feeling her cheeks grow warm. She was aware of her heavy accent and the risk of making a mistake. She took a deep breath and said, a little too loudly, "Excuse me, I need a bottle of water. The employee smiled, a very natural and non-judgmental behavior. Certainly. Anything else? Linguistica scanned the list. Yes. I am also looking for a newspaper. We keep them right next to the magazine rack, the employee replied, pointing. Linguistica walked over and picked up a paper. Then, she paused. The final item was a blue pen. She looked at the counter. Do you have any pens? I prefer a blue one. We do. They're in that basket right over there. Linguistica completed the transaction. When she returned to the apartment, Mr. Mash was waiting. Brilliant, Linguistica. Your pronunciation is good, but you spoke slowly. We must work on your speed and flow. From now on, you will always think and speak in English while in this virtual environment. You can only use your native language for absolute necessity. This is an essential part of the KeyTalk philosophy. It guarantees total immersion. Linguistica felt a surge of motivation. This was an extreme but effective method. She had the ability to make this adjustment. She was no longer just learning about the language, she was living it. She looked at the clock. Only 1 hour had passed. There was still a long way to go, but she felt much better about her future. She was ready for whatever came next. Linguistica's daily schedule became an intense cycle of virtual interaction and structured study. She quickly learned that KeyTalk's method was not about memorization. It was about constant application and immediate correction. Her virtual apartment was now an extension of her mind, demanding she engage with everything in English. For example, to cook a virtual meal, she had to follow an English recipe, naming every ingredient salt, pepper, oil out loud. To check her email, she had to read and reply to a series of fictional, complex business communications that required her to use specific terminology. One afternoon, Mr. Mash introduced a new concept, the contextual challenge. Linguistica, today we explore the nuances of polite disagreement, he announced. We will simulate a formal conference. The scene shifted. Linguistica was suddenly sitting at a large, round table, surrounded by several other people, all height avatars acting as administrators and consultants. A man at the head of the table, the virtual chairman, began to discuss a proposed change in corporate policy that Linguistica personally found flawed. This plan, while it may appeal to the mass market, fails to consider the potential impact on our core consumer base, the chairman stated. Linguistica felt a mix of fear and excitement. She had to assert her opinion and argue against the idea using appropriate, yet firm language. She remembered Mr. Mash's earlier advice, be critical, but never aggressive. She raised her hand. Excuse me, sir, but I must respectfully challenge that assumption. Her voice was steady, a small victory in itself. While the intention is to expand our reach, the consequence of abandoning our current successful strategy could be severe. A moment of silence hung in the air. The chairman turned his gaze to her. Could you elaborate on the potential negative effect, Linguistica? Certainly. If we shift our focus entirely, we risk losing the loyalty of the segment that contributes the majority of our revenue. The data suggests that this group values quality and consistency above all else. A sudden alteration to our product line could cause a widespread negative reaction. She had done it. She had used vocabulary that felt sophisticated and relevant. The conversation continued, and Linguistica found herself actively participating in the debate, listening carefully and responding with precision. She made a small grammatical error once, and a subtle, non-disruptive red light flashed in her peripheral KeyTalk vision, indicating a point for later review. When the session ended, Mr. Mash's avatar reappeared. Impressive, Linguistica. Your ability to structure a coherent argument and use complex terms like nuances and consistency shows significant progress. You are no longer a beginner. You are now able to contribute to a meaningful discourse. Linguistica felt a rush of satisfaction. This was the reward of her discipline and hard work. The immersive, high-tech approach was proving to be extraordinary. She was confident that she would achieve full fluency much faster than she had initially anticipated. The sheer volume of English she was exposed to daily was the key to this rapid advancement. She smiled. She was truly living the language.
Linguistica's progress was dramatic. She spent her days in the virtual environment, which, due to the intensive focus, felt like weeks. Her ability to switch between formal and casual discourse was developing rapidly. Mr. Mash kept the pressure on, introducing increasingly difficult scenarios. One morning, her task was to discover the details of a complex, simulated dispute over territory and natural resources in a fictional nation. She had to read documents, analyze data, and then discuss her findings with a virtual team of investigators and experts. The subject was full of controversial terms, from deficit to democracy. In one particularly heated session, she had to defend a position against a virtual opponent, a simulated, sharp-witted lawyer avatar who was designed to be difficult. Your defense of the current policy is deeply flawed, Linguistica, the lawyer asserted, his tone one of clear contempt. The evidence you cite is out of date, and the assumption that this action will not drive the local population to resistance is, frankly, stupid. Linguistica felt a flash of anger, but she controlled her emotion. She took a breath and directly countered his claim. On the contrary, the data I am referring to is from the latest census, published just this month. It demonstrates a dramatic decline in the very demographic you claim to represent. To deny this fact is to display a fundamental disregard for accuracy. She felt a thrill. She had used, on the contrary, demographic, and disregard all words she'd learned and internalized through practice. Her confidence was no longer a pretense, it was real. Mr. Mash, observing from his virtual control center, sent a private message. Excellent distinction between emotional response and professional delivery. Later that day, the KeyTalk program presented Linguistica with a different kind of challenge, a simulated adventure. She found herself in a virtual, dark forest, divided by a rushing river. Her mission was to deliver a document to a remote village before darkness. She had to deal with a series of interactive dialogue puzzles. To cross the river, she encountered a virtual engineer who was building a bridge. She needed to describe the dimensions of the river and the weight of her package accurately to get his assistance. The depth of the water is approximately 10 feet in the center, she said, consulting a virtual device. The distance across is at least 50 yards. The dual demand intellectual discourse and practical description forced her brain to draw on every part of her growing vocabulary. She wasn't just learning the words, she was learning the different ways they combine and differ in meaning depending on the context. Linguistica looked forward to the daily KeyTalk newsletter, which always included an editorial on a current event or a development in technology. She would read it, looking up every single word she did not know, ensuring her understanding was absolute. Her dedication was undeniable, and her desire to be equal to any native speaker was her driving force. She knew she was different from the person who had started just a few weeks ago.
Linguistica's intensive schedule and the KeyTalk program continued to yield extraordinary results. She was no longer simply using the vocabulary from the list, she was feeling its inherent power and utility, and constructing complex thoughts. Her ear for English had become so acute that she could distinguish regional differences in accent among the virtual characters. The latest phase focused on effective expression and emotional intelligence in conversation. Mr. Mash explained, to be truly fluent is to be able to convey your internal state, to show joy, frustration, disappointment appropriately. One event took place in a virtual art gallery. Linguistica's assignment was to act as an art critic and evaluate a series of paintings. This task required her to employ abstract and sensory language. She stood before a canvas of dark blue and red. Initially, the impact is one of heavy emotion, she stated to a virtual reporter. The painter has used a palette that is full of intensity. The contrast is sharp, and it seems to reflect a struggle between order and chaos. The reporter asked, "Do you believe the artist has achieved their objective?" Linguistica paused, thinking carefully. "I think the artist has explored the theme successfully. However, I feel that the execution lacks a certain delicacy. The brushstrokes are perhaps too aggressive and fail to draw the viewer in a more subtle way. It is certainly effective, but not necessarily elegant." Later that evening, Mr. Mash assigned a role-play session that was equal parts difficult and personal, a simulated interview for a highly coveted position at a leading international firm. The interviewer was designed to be skeptical and to question Linguistica's youth and lack of extensive experience. "Linguistica," the interviewer's voice was firm, "while your academic record is impressive, you are relatively junior. Give me an example of an extraordinary achievement that proves your capability." Linguistica sat up straighter. She realized she couldn't discuss the Key Talk program directly, but she could describe the skills it had given her. She chose a story about a crisis at her small agency. "Earlier this year, our biggest client threatened to withdraw their support due to an error in our reporting," she explained. "Everyone else was afraid and unable to act. I took the initiative to investigate the issue myself. I worked throughout the entire weekend to analyze the data and prepare a comprehensive explanation and a solution." She continued, "I didn't simply identify the mistake. I was able to propose a new, more efficient system for future reporting. I presented this idea to the client directly, and I was able to convince them of our continued professionalism. They not only remained our client, but they approved an extension of our contract. My boss was shocked, but admitted my action had saved the account." The interviewer nodded slowly. "That demonstrates courage and responsibility. Thank you." Leaving the virtual interview, Linguistica felt an immense satisfaction. She had navigated a high-stakes, stressful situation using flawless English, no hesitation, no awkward pauses. The language was no longer an external tool, it was an internal, seamless part of her thought process. She had achieved more than just fluency, she had acquired a new level of personal power. As time passed, Linguistica found herself seamlessly switching between her native language and English, a transition that felt natural and effortless. She was no longer a student of the language, she was an active participant in its vast world. She was confident in her ability to handle every kind of exchange, from casual talk with a virtual friend to a formal negotiation with a virtual CEO. Mr. Mash notified her that she had reached the final phase of the Key Talk program, the real-world simulation. "Linguistica, for the next 3 days, you will be virtually transported to an actual foreign city," Mr. Mash explained. "We need to confirm your full operational fluency under pressure. You will be alone, using only English to survive and accomplish your goal." The scene shifted, and Linguistica found herself standing on a virtual street in London. The traffic, the sound of people talking, the smell of coffee, everything felt real. Her mission was to secure an invitation to a private educational fundraising event and interview a prominent academic figure there. Her first task was to find the office of the organization hosting the event. She had to ask a virtual passerby for directions. "Excuse me, sir," she began, approaching a man in a virtual suit. "I am looking for the address of the Future Education Foundation. Could you possibly guide me?" The man, speaking with a quick, local accent, gave her detailed instructions, including a reference to a famous landmark and a confusing set of terms. Linguistica listened carefully, processing the information and confirming the steps. "So, I must walk straight along this street, and after I cross the bridge, I take the third right, past the old church," she verified. "That's right. You've got it." Later, She succeeded in locating the office and had to persuade the receptionist to grant her an interview. This required her to express herself with a mixture of politeness and professional determination, explaining the importance of her work and flattering the organization's mission. She had to describe her background and demonstrate her serious intentions and ethical approach. The climax of the challenge came at the event itself. Linguistica approached the academic Dr. Azar, a simulated expert in economic theory. She had to conduct a challenging interview that required deep understanding of complex material. Dr. Azar, Linguistica said, her voice full of authority, "Your recent research suggests that global financial policy has failed to adequately address the rising levels of inequality. What specific measures do you believe governments should implement to reverse this trend?" She used adequately, implement, and reverse, all words signifying advanced level discourse. Dr. Azar launched into a detailed explanation, and Linguistica was able to follow every complex sentence, even interjecting with an insightful question about the potential long-term consequences of his proposal. Finally, the simulation ended. Linguistica pulled off the KeyTalk headset, back in her real-life apartment. She was sweaty and exhausted, but her mind was clear. Mr. Mash's real voice came through her computer speaker. "Linguistica, congratulations. You have achieved level 10 fluency. Your score on the final assessment was nearly perfect. Your commitment to learning has been absolutely inspirational." Linguistica smiled, a genuine, bright expression. She felt a freedom that went beyond language. She had the power to communicate with the world. Her goal was no longer a dream, it was an available future. The money she had spent on the KeyTalk program was the best investment of her lifetime. The vast vocabulary was no longer a list of words to memorize, but the tools with which she would build her new life. She was ready to apply to universities abroad, confident in her ability to succeed in an English-speaking academic environment. Linguistica's success in the KeyTalk program had an immediate and profound effect on her life. With the new ability to communicate with absolute confidence, she felt capable of handling any situation. Her first real-world action was to finally address her long-term goal, graduate school in the United States. She spent several days compiling her application materials. She had to write a compelling essay and personal statement, a task that once seemed impossible, but now was a pleasure. She used the full range of her newly acquired vocabulary to articulate her academic background and her ambitious plan for the future. Her writing was clear, sophisticated, and free of the awkward phrasing that used to characterize her early attempts. She then had to secure a strong recommendation from her former university professor. This required a meeting where she had to briefly and efficiently explain the vast leap in her linguistic skill. "Professor," Linguistica said, sitting across from the elderly gentleman, "I wanted to provide you with additional context for my application. I've undergone an intensive language training program. It has transformed my comprehension and expression. I am able to approach complex subjects, from political science to biological research, with full understanding." The professor, who had known Linguistica to be a quiet, diligent student, was visibly impressed by her command of English. "Linguistica, your transformation is remarkable. I must admit, I'm astonished. I will certainly write a glowing report on your behalf." Linguistica applied to 3 top universities, each requiring a different focus and a unique approach in her application. She felt no anxiety about the process. She was simply executing a well-defined strategy. Weeks later, she received her first letter. She held the envelope, her hand shaking a little. She took a deep breath and tore it open. The word "congratulations" seemed to jump off the page. She had been granted admission to her top choice, a prestigious institution known for its cutting-edge research in economics. The letter mentioned a generous scholarship, a reward that would cover the majority of her tuition and living expense. It was an absolute miracle of effort and timing. She immediately called her mother, her voice full of joy. She soon informed her boss that she would be leaving. Her boss, initially surprised, was ultimately supportive. Go Linguistica. You have the gift and the ability to achieve great things. She decided to celebrate with Mr. Mash one last time in the virtual world. Thank you, Linguistica said to her advisor, a genuine appreciation in her tone. This program didn't just teach me English, it gave me the confidence to pursue a better life. Remember, Linguistica, language is the ultimate tool, Mr. Mash replied. The world is now yours to explore. Your hard work and dedication prove that anyone is able to master anything they truly desire. Go forth and make an impact. Linguistica packed her bags. She included a small, handwritten note to herself in her suitcase, a reminder of the journey. Never underestimate the power of a single word. As she boarded the plane, she looked forward to the adventure. She knew she was ready for the next chapter, a chapter that would be written entirely in English. Linguistica arrived at the university in a major American city, filled with a powerful sense of achievement. The Key Talk program had prepared her absolutely for this transition. She found her apartment easily, a small but adequate place close to the campus. Her first week was a whirlwind of orientation and administrative tasks. She had to handle registration, manage her financial account at the bank, and obtain her student identification. Her new ability to communicate fluently made each of these challenges simple matters of routine. She was able to interact with administrators and staff with ease, discussing provisions and requirements without fear of misunderstanding. Her classes were intense. She was now among peers and professors from around the world, and the academic rigor was high. In her core economic theory course, she had to analyze complex material and participate in a weekly seminar that required constant intellectual engagement. In one particular session, the discussion turned to global monetary policy and the impact of financial crises on developing nations. A fellow student made a rather simplistic comment about inflation. Linguistica took a deep breath. She knew she had the knowledge and the vocabulary to add a more nuanced perspective. I must intervene here, she began, choosing her words carefully. While it is true that rising prices are a primary symptom of inflation, we must also consider the underlying mechanism. The data I have examined suggests a significant failure of regulation and a lack of institutional stability within the government of several of these countries. This failure is the catalyst for the crisis, more so than the mere presence of excessive money supply. The professor, a prominent scholar in the field, nodded, a look of acknowledgement on his face. That is an excellent point, Linguistica. You've managed to distinguish between the visible effect and the deep-seated cause. Your grasp of the subject is impressive. Linguistica felt a surge of pride that was not about getting the answer right, but about being able to contribute meaningfully to an international academic discourse. Outside of class, Linguistica began to explore the city. She volunteered at a local non-profit organization that offered assistance to new immigrants. This work gave her a chance to use her English in a different context, one full of empathy and personal stories. She had to interpret and translate information about legal rights, housing, and employment opportunities. She met a woman who had suffered great difficulty and was now fighting a battle for social justice. Linguistica had to draft a letter to a local advocate, laying out the case with accuracy and persuasive language. It is crucial that we immediately address the severe discrimination this individual has faced, she wrote. The incident violates several core principles of civil law and constitutes a clear breach of trust. Her two worlds, the rigorous academic life and the compassionate social work, were, in fact, connected by the powerful tools she had acquired. English was more than a subject of study. It was the vehicle for her future, the source of her newfound ability to make a difference, not just for herself, but for others. She was confident that this journey was only the beginning. Linguistica's life in the United States settled into a challenging but rewarding routine. Her academic ability was recognized by her professors, who were quick to acknowledge her talent. She was deeply involved in her research, focusing on the intersection of economic policy and social welfare. She was able to read and analyze vast amounts of literature, from ancient texts on philosophy to current reports on global finance, with total comprehension. She would often find herself in the university library, the massive collection of knowledge on her acting as an inspiration. She didn't have to constantly refer to a dictionary. The meaning of most words was clear to her, absorbed through the immersive nature of the KeyTalk program. One day, her professor assigned a critical group project that required a high level of cooperation and leadership. The task was to develop a comprehensive proposal for sustainable development in a developing nation. Linguistica's team included students who were brilliant but sometimes lacked organization. One student, a young man named Shazin, was excellent at data analysis but had a tendency to dominate the discussion. During one meeting, Shazin was advocating for an extreme measure, the complete abandonment of a major agricultural practice based on a single piece of recent research. Linguistica felt the need to intervene and steer the conversation back to a balanced approach. Shazin, I agree that your analysis of the cost is accurate, Linguistica said, her tone firm yet friendly. However, we must not overlook the cultural and political reality. To impose such a radical change would surely provoke widespread resistance and could easily undermine entire project's legitimacy. She continued, instead of a total shift, perhaps we should explore a gradual transition. We need to provide an adequate level of incentive and training to the local farmers. The achievement of our objective depends heavily on local support. Shazin listened, his initial aggression fading. That's a valid point, Linguistica. We should adjust the framework to be more sensitive to human factors. Linguistica had used her language skill to mediate and to lead without being domineering. She demonstrated leadership through articulate logic. Her ability to think critically and express those thoughts perfectly in English made her the natural director of the project. Linguistica's expertise was soon noticed beyond the classroom. She was invited to contribute a brief article to a university journal on the topic of international aid. She worked diligently on the piece, ensuring every sentence was precise and impactful. She understood that the media was a powerful platform for her ideas. The contemporary model of development assistance must shift from mere charity to sustainable investment, she wrote. Historically, many programs have suffered from a lack of sufficient long-term vision and have instead promoted dependency. The fundamental principle ought to be empowerment, not simply provision. The article was published and received a positive response. Several professors commented on the maturity and depth of her writing. Linguistica realized that the vocabulary she had so eagerly acquired was no longer a tool for personal advancement, but a means of shaping opinion and influencing policy. She had succeeded in her quest to learn English fast, and in doing so, she had unlocked her true potential to make a global impact. Naturally, Linguistica's new status as a leading student required her to take on more responsibility. She was asked to assist her professor in a major research project that was negotiating a contract with an international non-governmental organization NGO. This affair was far more complex and high stakes than anything she had encountered in the virtual simulations. The project involved analyzing the long-term impact of climate change on agricultural yield in various regions. It required her to not only process vast amounts of statistical data, but also to communicate the findings to a diverse audience of scientists, politicians, and funders. Her first task was to prepare a detailed presentation outlining the initial findings. She used graphs and charts to visually represent the information, ensuring the delivery was professional and easy to follow. Our analysis clearly indicates that the current projection for crop failure is significantly underestimated, she stated during a virtual conference with the NGO directors. We must increase the scope of our intervention and develop a robust alternative strategy for food security. To do anything less would be to neglect our fundamental obligation to the vulnerable populations in these zones. Her language was powerful and persuasive, employing terms like robust, underestimated, and fundamental obligation. The directors were impressed by her command of the subject and her ability to assert her view with such eloquence. Linguistica's personal life was also flourishing. She had made several friends, both American and international, and her interactions with them were entirely in English. She could joke, share stories, and discuss anything from a new movie to a philosophical question without hesitation. One evening, she was invited to a dinner party at her professor's house. She sat next to a visiting scholar, and spent the entire meal engaging in a lively conversation about the difference between European and American political systems. She listened actively and contributed her own insightful opinions. She often thought back to her initial decision to invest in the KeyTalk program. It had not only given her a language, it had completely transformed her self-perception. She no longer saw herself as a minority or an outsider, but as a full, capable participant in the global society. Her journey was the ultimate proof that modern, impactful learning could shorten the path to mastery. Linguistica had achieved her goal of learning English very fast, and in doing so, had unlocked a lifetime of potential. She was an ambassador for her own success, a powerful advocate for the idea that ambition, when paired with effective tools, has no limit. Linguistica's first year of graduate study had been a resounding success, largely due to her ability to process and present complex information with total fluency. She was now working on her thesis, an ambitious project that challenged the conventional wisdom regarding international development aid. The pressure was intense, and the academic rigor required her to read literally hundreds of articles and books. Her professor had assigned her a new role, liaison between the university and a prominent think tank that specialized in policy analysis. This required her to frequently travel to Washington, D.C., and attend high-level meetings. In one meeting, the discussion centered on the controversial issue of economic sanctions and their impact on ordinary citizens. A senior analyst argued that the sanctions were a necessary weapon to force regime change. Linguistica felt a deep sense of responsibility to offer a counter-perspective, one drawn from her studies and her volunteer work with refugees. She waited for a pause and then intervened. While the objective of altering policy is understandable, we must not overlook the disproportionate burden placed on the civilian population, she stated. Based on available statistics, the humanitarian consequence of widespread trade restrictions is severe. The rate of infant mortality has increased rapidly, and the lack of essential medicine is a violation of basic human rights. Her challenge was delivered with authority and backed by factual reference. The analyst was initially surprised by the directness of the young student, but the logic was sound. He acknowledged her point, leading to a more nuanced debate. Linguistica realized that her voice, once silent due to linguistic limitations, now carried weight and influence. Linguistica recognized that her rapid achievement was a testament to the modern methods she had used. She felt compelled to share her story and help others who were struggling with English acquisition. She volunteered to run a small workshop for incoming international students at the university. She called the session Beyond the Textbook. In her presentation, she emphasized the importance of full immersion. Don't just study the language, live it, she advised. Read the newspaper daily. Watch American television not just for entertainment, but to absorb the natural rhythm of speech. When you hear a new word, try to use it immediately in a sentence. Repetition is key. She demonstrated techniques she had learned in Key Talk, how to break down long, complicated sentences and how to distinguish between similar words that differ subtly in meaning, such as assure, ensure, and ensure. A young man raised his hand and admitted he felt a lot of anxiety about speaking to native speakers. I understand that feeling completely, Linguistica said, with great empathy. But you must be willing to make mistakes. Every mistake is a lesson. Don't let the fear of error prevent you from engaging. Your ability is already present. You just need to unlock it. By teaching, Linguistica felt her own knowledge was further solidified. She was no longer the person who struggled to express a simple thought. She was a teacher and a leader, using English as a powerful tool to inspire others to pursue their own global dreams. Her mastery had provided her with a platform to advocate for a better, more connected world. Linguistica was now in her final semester of graduate school, the climax of her academic career. Her thesis, a rigorous work on global economic governance, was acknowledged by the faculty as extraordinary. She had succeeded in integrating complex theory with practical policy recommendations. Her achievement was a testament to her initial courage and the impactful learning method she had chosen. She had been invited to deliver a lecture at a major international forum, an honor usually reserved for established scholars. This was the ultimate test of her fluency and confidence. The day of the lecture arrived. Linguistica stood on the stage, looking out at a vast audience of policymakers, academics, and journalists. She felt no longer the nervous girl who struggled to utter a simple sentence. Her speech focused on the critical need for universal access to financial resources to combat poverty. We must understand that poverty is not merely the absence of money, but the lack of ability to make choices. She began, her voice clear and authoritative. The current framework of international assistance is often inefficient, creating structural dependence. We need a radical transformation in our approach, one that views the poor as investors in their own future, rather than simply recipients of aid. She used sophisticated vocabulary: governance, universal, transformation, and efficient, with the precision of a native speaker. She addressed the concerns of critics, analyzed the economic data, and proposed a new model of microfinance that she had developed in her thesis. The entire delivery was flawless, her passion for justice shining through every word. After the lecture, she was surrounded by reporters and admirers. A prominent director of a global development organization approached her. "That was a brilliant presentation, Linguistica," the director said. "Your understanding is vast, and your vision is compelling. We need people like you. We would like to offer you a key position immediately upon graduation, one that will allow you to implement your proposal on a global scale." Linguistica accepted the offer, feeling a sense of closure and absolute fulfillment. She had started her journey with a single goal: to learn English, and had ended it with the power to change the world. The English language, once a barrier, was now the foundation of her professional life. She looked back at the young woman in the small apartment, staring at her laptop and making the difficult choice to invest in herself. She smiled at the memory. Her commitment had paid off in a truly extraordinary fashion. The novel of Linguistica's life was just beginning, and the entire world was now the stage for her voice. Her story was a powerful demonstration that with modern tools and absolute will, anything is possible. She had reached her zenith, ready to embark on the greatest adventure of all, using her ability for the benefit of humanity. Linguistica's success story had a viral effect within the academic and professional community. She was often asked to share the specifics of her extraordinary achievement, particularly how she had compressed the years of typical language acquisition into a mere matter of months. She became an advocate for modern educational technology, frequently discussing the impact of immersive virtual environments. She explained that the KeyTalk program had not simply provided information, but had developed the cognitive ability to think directly in English, eliminating the time-consuming step of mental translation. The traditional method is slow because it treats language as an abstract subject, she would explain in interviews. The modern approach treats it as a live, operational tool. I was forced to negotiate, argue, and describe complex scenarios in real time. That level of intensity is the X factor in rapid fluency. In her new role at the development organization, Linguistica traveled across the globe, meeting with heads of state and local leaders. Her ability to seamlessly switch between formal diplomatic language and casual, trust-building conversation was her greatest asset. In one critical meeting in Africa, she had to address a local official who was skeptical of her plan. The official felt that the proposed project was too foreign and would not sustain itself. Linguistica listened to his concerns with respect and patience. "I understand your hesitation," she replied, using English that was clear and unpretentious. "It is true that historically, many interventions have failed to incorporate local wisdom. However, this proposal is designed to transfer ownership and knowledge immediately. We are not here to impose a solution, but to provide the initial resources and technical assistance you require to build your own sustainable future." She used the word sustain repeatedly, linking her goal to the official's own long-term vision. She succeeded in winning his trust and securing the necessary local approval. Linguistica's journey was the ultimate vindication of her initial choice. She wasn't just able to speak English, she was able to use it to bridge cultural divides, negotiate peace, and advocate for justice on a global scale. Her life, once limited by a single language, had exploded into a universe of possibility. She had reached the zenith of her professional life, and she knew that every day ahead would be a new opportunity to prove the power of effort and the value of communication. The novel of her life was now a global epic, written in fluent, impactful English. Linguistica's professional life now revolved around global policy and implementation. Her ability to clearly articulate complex economic concepts in English made her an invaluable asset to the international NGO. She was able to lead teams in diverse settings, managing projects from inception to completion. She often found herself in the middle of intense negotiations over funding and resource allocation. In one case, she had to advocate for a massive increase in the budget for a new educational initiative aimed at youth in South America. She faced a skeptical board of directors who were concerned about the risk involved. Linguistica prepared her presentation meticulously, drawing on her academic background and practical experience. "We must view education not as an expense, but as the ultimate capital investment," she asserted. "The available data demonstrates a direct correlation between literacy rates and economic stability. To reject this proposal would be to willingly contribute to the continuation of the poverty cycle." Our fundamental responsibility is to provide these children with the tools they need to build a better future. Her eloquence and logical construction were undeniable. She managed to convince the majority of the board to approve the funding, a major victory that would directly affect the lives of thousands of children. Linguistica never forgot where she came from. Despite her busy schedule, she maintained her dedication to helping others acquire the same ability that had transformed her life. She worked with tech innovators to develop a low-cost, accessible version of the immersive learning system she had used. She wrote a book about her experience, titled The English Code: Rapid Fluency in the Modern Age, which quickly became an international bestseller. In the introduction, she described the initial feeling of being limited, and the subsequent sense of freedom when she cracked the code. For anyone who feels they lack the ability to compete on the global stage due to language, I tell you, do not abandon hope, she wrote. The means to achieve mastery are now available. Embrace the new technology, commit to absolute immersion, and you will acquire the power to change your life. This is not a dream, it is a practical goal. Linguistica's impact was now twofold. She was influencing global policy and she was empowering individuals to pursue their own academic and professional goals. She had succeeded beyond her wildest expectations, all because of one initial, brave decision to learn English very fast and make her voice heard in the world. Her life was the ultimate proof of the power of language and the extraordinary potential within every person. Linguistica's remarkable journey continued to serve as a powerful narrative for the organization she represented. Her ability to bridge the gap between theory and practical application earned her widespread respect and admiration. She was able to lead complex, multinational teams, ensuring every member was able to contribute effectively, regardless of their background or native language. Her advocacy for technologically advanced language acquisition became a central theme in her public life. She often traveled to conferences, sharing her story and pushing for educational reform. She did not only discuss the necessity of English as a global tool but also the moral obligation to provide accessible, modern means of learning it. Linguistica's commitment to excellence led her to publish a major scholarly article in a highly regarded journal, analyzing the correlation between linguistic skill and economic mobility. The article was a fusion of economics, cognitive science, and educational policy. In the piece, she argued that rapid language acquisition should be a global priority, treating it as a fundamental human right in the modern era. She provided detailed statistics to support her claim that countries with high English proficiency rates had a significant advantage in attracting foreign investment and fostering innovation. We can no longer view language learning as a leisure activity, she wrote. It is, in fact, a critical infrastructure investment for any nation seeking to compete effectively on the international stage. The evidence is unambiguous. The impact of the article was immediate and widespread, leading to policy discussions in several governments. Linguistica had achieved her goal of intellectual influence, a victory made possible only because of the fluent, powerful English she had mastered. Years later, her extraordinary work in global development and her pioneering advocacy for educational technology were recognized with a prestigious international award. The ceremony was held in a grand hall, attended by leaders and dignitaries from around the world. As Linguistica stood on the podium to accept the honor, she looked out at the crowd. She remembered the small girl who was terrified to speak a single English word. "This award is not for me alone," she said, her voice ringing with emotion and conviction. "It is a tribute to the power of technology, the potential within every individual, and the universal human desire for connection and opportunity." She concluded her acceptance speech by addressing the youth in the audience.
Your ability is not defined by where you start, but by how bravely you choose to move forward. Acquire the tools, embrace the challenge, and you will find that your voice has no limits. Linguistica, the woman who wanted to learn English very fast in a modern way, had become a global figure, using the power of language to shape the future. Her novel was a masterpiece of determination. Linguistica had been working at the international organization for a number of years. Her contributions were massive, and her influence had only grown. She was now responsible for overseeing the entire Asia-Pacific region, a position that demanded unrelenting effort and constant travel. She mastered the art of negotiation, able to handle delicate diplomatic situations with grace and precision. One evening, while in her hotel room in Singapore, she unpacked a small box she carried with her. Inside was the old, slightly battered virtual reality headset from the KeyTalk program. She held it, a wave of nostalgia washing over her. She remembered the initial terror of the grocery store simulation and the intellectual intensity of the academic debate challenges. She smiled, recognizing that the program had not just equipped her with vocabulary and grammar. It had fundamentally reshaped her capacity for learning and communication. Her ability to think critically, respond quickly, and assert herself was a direct consequence of that intensive, modern training. Her phone rang. It was Mr. Mash, her former advisor, calling to congratulate her on a recent policy victory that had been widely reported in the global media. Linguistica, your leadership is remarkable, Mr. Mash said. You have achieved the ultimate outcome we ever hoped for. Thank you, Mr. Mash, Linguistica replied. I owe so much of my success to the foundation that KeyTalk provided. It gave me the confidence to compete on an equal footing. The organization soon approached Linguistica with an extraordinary opportunity, the position of Chief Executive Officer CEO. This role would require her to manage a budget of billions and influence the direction of development aid for an entire decade. It was a daunting challenge, requiring incredible management skill and political savvy. She knew the debate over her candidacy would be intense and controversial, but she also knew she had the ability and the vision to lead. She accepted the nomination. Her acceptance speech was broadcast to employees and partners around the world. We stand at a critical juncture, she declared, her English flawless and resonating with passion. The problems of poverty, climate change, and inequality are not simple, and they will not yield to conventional solutions. We need to be bold, innovative, and uncompromising in our dedication to human welfare. I am confident that together, we can achieve a more just and sustainable future for every person on this planet. Linguistica, the woman who yearned to learn English very fast, had found her ultimate purpose. Her mastery of the language was the key that had unlocked her destiny, allowing her to transition from a quiet student to a global leader. Her story served as a powerful testament to the fact that language is power, and with power comes the greatest responsibility of all, to make a difference. Linguistica's tenure as CEO of the Global Development Organization was marked by unprecedented success and bold initiative. She used her authority to fundamentally alter the organization's approach, focusing more on sustainable technology and educational infrastructure, rather than short-term aid. Her ability to communicate this vision from a detailed technical briefing to a motivational speech was her ultimate tool. Years after the publication of her first book, Linguistica felt a strong urge to write a second novel, one that was less about the method and more about the consequence of linguistic mastery. She titled it, The Inbound Voice. It was a testimony to the power of self-improvement and the responsibility that comes with influence. In a key chapter, she reflected on the early days of her struggle. She described the feeling of being trapped and the almost physical pain of knowing she had great ideas but lacked the means to express them effectively. This personal reflection made her story resonate with a vast audience on the world. English is the contemporary key to the global conversation, she wrote. My fast learning was not a trick or a shortcut. It was a brutal commitment to a modern, intensive approach that demanded absolute immersion. The reward was not merely a diploma, but a seat at the table where decisions that affect billions are made. Linguistica spent her time not only managing the organization, but also mentoring young professionals, especially those from non-English speaking backgrounds. She saw in them the same yearning for opportunity she once felt. She used her platform to advocate for equal educational access in every time zone and in every village. Her work led her to collaborate with leaders in science, technology, and politics. She initiated a major global campaign to reduce carbon emissions, a highly controversial but crucial undertaking. She had to master the environmental vocabulary and argue against powerful vested interests, a task that required every ounce of her rhetorical ability. In her last annual report, as CEO, Linguistica summarized her vision. Our most powerful resource is human potential, she concluded. If we can break down the barriers of communication, we unleash an unparalleled level of global cooperation and innovation. This is the ultimate victory. Linguistica, the once timid girl, had not only learned English very fast but had used that ability to shape the 21st century. Her life was a beacon, a testament to the power of focused effort and the unending possibilities that await those who dare to speak. Her novel of self-transformation was complete, a classic of modern achievement. Linguistica's life as CEO brought with it a new set of challenges that required a constant adjustment of her communication style. She had to balance the needs of the board, the demands of governments, and the reality on the ground where her organization's work was most crucial. Her ability to speak with authority and empathy in English made her exceptionally effective in these diverse arenas. In a particularly intense meeting with the organization's financial committee, Linguistica had to defend a decision to redirect a significant amount of funding away from a popular but ultimately ineffective program. The committee chairman expressed skepticism and concern about the political consequence of the move. Mr. Chairman, I acknowledge the short-term controversy this may cause, Linguistica stated, her tone unwavering. However, our obligation is not to win a popularity contest, but to ensure the most efficient and ethical use of every single dollar. The program in question lacks measurable impact and fails to address the fundamental cause of the issue. We have an alternative, a pilot project that has demonstrated an extraordinary return on investment and a sustainable outcome for the local community. The choice is clear. She used efficient, ethical, and unwavering to project both competence and moral authority, successfully persuading the committee to approve the redirection. Linguistica remained acutely aware that her mastery of English was the key to her unprecedented career path. She did not consider her learning complete. She still made a conscious effort to acquire new vocabulary, particularly in the scientific and technological fields, as they became increasingly relevant to her work. She dedicated a significant portion of the organization's resources to supporting educational reform, focusing on programs that emulated the immersive, high-speed methods of the Keytalk system. She was not just a leader, she was a living model of the transformation she advocated for. Linguistica's life was no longer just a personal novel of achievement, it was a guidebook for millions who yearned to break through the barriers of language and economic limitation. She had reached the zenith of her professional ambition, but her vision for a more equitable world, powered by unrestricted communication, was still evolving. Her journey was a powerful testament to the fact that the greatest investments are always in oneself. Linguistica's success as CEO of the Global Development Organization was absolutely unquestionable. Her ability to articulate a clear, compelling vision in English continued to serve as the foundation of her authority. She was able to lead high-stakes international meetings, address the UN Assembly, and advocate for her organization's mission with a level of eloquence that few could match. One of Linguistica's most significant achievements was the creation of the Global Language Equity Fund, a massive initiative designed to provide modern, high-speed language training modeled after her own experience to young people in developing nations. She successfully petitioned governments and private donors for billions of dollars in funding, using persuasive language that focused on the economic advantage and social justice of her plan. She argued that linguistic inequality was a major barrier to global progress. We cannot achieve our full potential as a species if the best ideas are trapped behind a language barrier, she declared in one speech. This fund is not charity, it is an essential investment in collective human capability. We must equip every ambitious mind with the tools of the global conversation. Her vision was so compelling that the fund quickly exceeded its initial goal. The implementation of the program was monitored closely, and the initial results demonstrated a rapid, positive effect on the participants' academic and professional trajectories. Linguistica's personal journey had come full circle. Years after her first nervous attempt to speak English, she now commanded the attention of the world. Her success was often highlighted as a case study in determination and the efficacy of modern learning methods. On the 20th anniversary of her enrollment in the Key Talk program, Linguistica attended a special gala celebrating her contributions. She stood on the stage, no longer just the CEO, but a symbol of unbound human potential. She held up a copy of her first novel, The English Code. This book tells the story of a desperate attempt to learn a language, she said, her eyes twinkling. But the true novel is written in the lives of the millions who now have a voice, because we dared to change how we teach. The ability to communicate is the first step to freedom. The rest is history. Linguistica's novel of self-mastery was complete. She had achieved not just fluency, but global influence, all because she refused to accept the slow path and chose the fast, impactful, and modern way to learn English. After years of intense effort and extraordinary achievement, Linguistica decided to retire from her role as CEO. Her legacy was secure. The Global Language Equity Fund was fully operational, and the organization was running on the sustainable framework she had designed. She had reached the zenith of professional life, but felt a need for quiet reflection and a different kind of contribution. She bought a small cabin near the coast, a place far from the constant pressure of global politics and finance. The pace of life slowed, and she finally had the time to fully process the vast journey she had undertaken. She spent her mornings walking on the beach, watching the waves, and her afternoons writing. Her third book was not a novel or a policy paper, but a memoir, a deep, personal account of the link between linguistic ability and personal freedom. She called it The Architect of the Self. In it, she discussed the psychological transformation that accompanied her rapid English mastery. To learn a language so quickly is to learn how to adjust and adapt at an unprecedented rate, she wrote. It forces your mind to be flexible, to reject the old comfortable patterns. That mental discipline was the true gift of the Key Talk program. It equipped me to handle every challenge, from a university debate to a complex UN resolution. She dedicated a significant chapter to the importance of accurate communication in global affairs, stressing that misunderstandings often arise from poor linguistic skill, not malice. Linguistica remained connected to the world through her philanthropic work. She funded a new scholarship program specifically for students who demonstrated a fierce desire to learn English and use it for social impact. She personally met the recipients each year, spending time listening to their stories and offering advice. In one meeting, a young woman told Linguistica that she was afraid of failing to live up to Linguistica's example. Linguistica smiled warmly. "My story is not a measure for your success. It is simply proof that the door is open," she reassured her. "Your journey will be unique, and your contribution will be different. The key is that you have the ability to speak your truth and to advocate for your vision." Linguistica had achieved everything she had hoped for and more. She wasn't just a woman who learned English very fast. She was a force of global unity, her life a lasting testimony to the power of linguistic mastery in the modern world. Her novel was closed, but her legacy would continue to inspire countless new chapters. Linguistica's retirement wasn't a retreat into absolute idleness but a shift in focus to advocacy and mentorship. Her memoir had become an international bestseller, and the demand for her perspective on education and leadership remained high. She accepted a position as a distinguished scholar at her alma mater, the university where her global journey had begun. Her role involved teaching advanced seminars on global governance and development economics, and she took great pleasure in guiding the next generation of leaders. She used her own experience as a case study to illustrate the impact of effort and strategic learning. In one seminar, she discussed the necessity of achieving linguistic flexibility to navigate the complex political landscape. "You must be able to move between the formal diction of a treaty and the informal language of a casual conversation with a local farmer," she explained. "Both are equally important to accomplish your mission. The ability to adapt your style demonstrates respect and builds trust." She encouraged her students to seek out opportunities for full immersion, reinforcing the idea that traditional methods alone were inadequate for rapid, impactful learning. She advised them to use every available technology to accelerate their skill acquisition. Linguistica collaborated with the original founders of the KeyTalk program to establish a non-profit arm of the company. This new entity focused on providing free, high-quality, immersive English training to refugees and immigrants around the world. She knew that giving them the ability to communicate was the single most effective way to enable their recovery and integration into new societies. She observed the first cohort of students using the new system. Watching a young man nervously but successfully complete a virtual job interview in English, she felt a wave of satisfaction that eclipsed all her professional honors. She recognized in his eyes the same desperation and determination she had felt 2 decades ago. Linguistica's novel had come to a close, but her story now served as the prologue for thousands of others. She had proven that the desire to learn English very fast in a modern way was not just a personal ambition, but a key to unlocking global human potential, creating a world where fewer voices were silenced by the barriers of language. Even in retirement, Linguistica's schedule was far from empty. Her influence had shifted from operational management to strategic consultation and philanthropy. She served on the boards of several key international organizations, her advice sought after on matters of economic development and educational reform. Linguistica focused her attention on institutional change. She used her expertise to help governments and nonprofits redesign their educational systems, advocating for the adoption of modern, technology-driven methods for English instruction. Her argument was always consistent. Slow, passive learning was an injustice in the globalized era. In a series of high-profile interviews, she used her perfect English to challenge the status quo. "We must abandon the obsolete pedagogical techniques that produce minimal results over maximum time," she stated. The evidence is overwhelming. Immersive, intensive, and interactive learning is the only path to equity and global competitiveness. This is not a suggestion, it is a requirement. She collaborated with cognitive scientists to publish papers that provided the scientific justification for accelerated language acquisition, translating complex research into clear, actionable policy recommendations. Her impact was structural and long-lasting. Linguistica never ceased to value the vocabulary she had so earnestly acquired. She understood that the richness of English was its strength. Even in her leisure time, she read voraciously classical literature, contemporary philosophy, and detailed historical accounts. She felt a deep satisfaction in knowing that every word she read or spoke was clear and unimpeded. The language that had once been a painful barrier was now a limitless horizon. Her life itself was the ultimate novel of transformation, a powerful story that continued to echo across the globe. She had succeeded in her quest to learn English very fast in a modern way, and in doing so, she had given others the courage to begin their own unbound journeys. The final chapter of Linguistica's personal story was one of profound peace and perpetual influence. Linguistica, now comfortable in her academic and advisory role, experienced a profound sense of fulfillment. Her life had shifted from the intense action of the corporate world to the calm wisdom of reflection and mentorship. She found herself focusing more on the underlying philosophy of communication rather than just its practical application. In her seminars, Linguistica often discussed the necessity of balance, the ability to use the full spectrum of English, from the simple to the sophisticated. She emphasized that the goal of mastery was not to use the most difficult word, but the most accurate word for the situation. True fluency is about choice, she told her students. You must be able to deliver a brief, clear summary of a complex project to a busy executive, and later, write a detailed, nuanced critique for a scholarly journal. The ability to vary your diction and tone is the mark of an able communicator. She encouraged them to read widely, from fiction to finance, to acquire a broad lexicon that allowed for maximum flexibility. She reminded them that English was a living language and that continuous learning was essential to maintain their edge. Linguistica collaborated with her university to launch a new online platform, the Global Competence Initiative, aimed at students in developing nations. The platform offered free access to immersive English modules and professional skills training. She knew this effort would yield dividends in global equity for years to come. In one of her last public addresses to the beneficiaries of this initiative, Linguistica reflected on her own start. I was once in your shoes, yearning for a way to cross the barrier, she said, her voice carrying authority and warmth. I sought the fastest, most impactful path, and I found it. Now, I have done everything in my power to make that path easier for you. Seize this opportunity. Embrace the language not as a subject to be passed, but as the tool that will build your future. Linguistica had closed the final chapter on her personal novel of transformation. The final words of her life's work were about empowerment and the limitless horizon that awaits those who master the art of communication. She had reached her zenith, a quiet, powerful influence on the world. Linguistica, having stepped away from the direct management of the global organization, dedicated her remaining years to advancing her philanthropic goals. Her focus narrowed to ensuring the perpetuity of the Global Language Equity Fund and furthering research into accelerated language acquisition. She had transitioned from being an agent of change to a patron of future change makers. As a distinguished scholar, Linguistica mentored doctoral candidates, challenging them to integrate linguistic capability into every area of economic and social study. She argued that true research couldn't be conducted in a bubble of a single language. Her office became a hub for international students seeking her guidance and wisdom. She published her final major work, an academic treatise titled The Global Lexicon, Language as a Vector of Development. The book synthesized her lifelong experience, providing irrefutable evidence that investment in rapid English proficiency yields the highest return on investment for national development. It was her most comprehensive and technically dense work, yet her English was so perfect that it remained accessible to a wide readership. The most profound inequality today is the disparity in access to global discourse, she wrote in the introduction. To address poverty, we must first address silence. My journey from a single word to a global platform is the living proof that this vector is the most powerful tool for socio-economic mobility. Linguistica's commitment to the KeyTalk methodology was absolute. She ensured that the non-profit arm of the program received perpetual funding and was dedicated to the principle of fast, immersive learning. She often stated that every person deserves the chance to learn English fast and achieve their full global potential. In her final years, Linguistica witnessed the true impact of her work. Graduates of the Equity Fund program were becoming successful entrepreneurs, politicians, and academics in their own countries, all connected by their mastery of English and their shared sense of global citizenship. When Linguistica passed, she was remembered not just as a successful CEO or scholar, but as the woman who turned a personal necessity into a global movement. Her story remained the ultimate novel of modern transformation, a testament to the fact that with focus, the greatest barriers can be overcome with surprising speed. Her legacy was the sound of millions of new, confident voices speaking English all over the world. Linguistica's influence continued to expand, even in her later years. She had established a foundation focused on global education and communication, ensuring her lifelong commitment to empowerment would continue. Her novel of self-mastery had inspired a wave of educational reformers who applied the principles of rapid, immersive learning. A major project of Linguistica's foundation was the integration of KeyTalk-based language training, the descendant of the KeyTalk program, into public school systems in several countries. This initiative, initially met with skepticism, soon yielded dramatic results, proving that accelerated acquisition was not just for elite professionals. She oversaw the development of curricula that used virtual scenarios from simulated international summits to everyday marketplaces to force students to actively use English in context. The success rates far exceeded those of traditional classroom methods. Linguistica often spoke about the ethical imperative of this approach. We are not just teaching a language, we are leveling the playing field, she explained in an interview. We are giving every child the same opportunity to access global knowledge and economic mobility. This is the most fundamental form of social justice. Linguistica lived to see the world she had fought for begin to materialize. Her grandchildren, who grew up bilingual and trilingual, spoke English with a natural mastery that she had once only dreamed of. They represented the next generation of global citizens who viewed linguistic barriers as an obsolescence. In one of her final public appearances, a commencement address at her alma mater, Linguistica delivered a powerful closing message. The novel of my life was written by a single decision, to gain a voice, she said, her voice still strong and clear. But your novel will be written with thousands of voices working in harmony. Use the tools you have been given. Communicate with courage, listen with empathy, and never stop learning. The future belongs to those who speak it. Linguistica, the grandmaster of self-transformation, finally found true peace knowing that her initial quest to learn English very fast in a modern way had not only changed her life, but had paved a way for a more connected and equitable world. Her novel was not just a story, it was the blueprint for global unity. Linguistica's life entered a phase of serene yet active contribution. Her influence was less about daily management and more about guiding the philosophical direction of global development and education. She had become a grandmaster of communication, using her perfect English not for personal gain, but to solidify the gains for the next generations. Her time at the university allowed her to codify her insights into a formal academic framework. She developed a course, Global Linguistics and Socioeconomic Mobility, which quickly became the most sought-after elective on campus. In her lectures, she always returned to the original premise of her journey, the necessity of speed and intensity. The modern world does not wait for 4 years of slow study, she would assert. It demands competence now. The gift of the immersive system was that it didn't just teach words, it trained the mind for rapid cognitive switching and high-pressure discourse. This mental agility is the true heirloom we must pass on. She challenged her students to think about how linguistic skill was intertwined with power structures, arguing that by providing accessible, fast English training, they were disrupting centuries. Linguistica's most lasting contribution became the omnipresence of the new learning methods. The virtual reality modules, now accessible via simple smartphones throughout the developing world, transformed the educational landscape. She saw photos and videos daily of young people in remote villages using the program to practice English with simulated international professionals. She observed that the participants were not only gaining linguistic skill, but were also acquiring global cultural competence, learning the nuances of international business and diplomacy directly through the simulations. In her final memoir, she reflected on the entire cycle, the initial desperation, the intensive commitment, the global success, and finally, the return to education to share the gift. The language was the key, but the purpose was always bigger than myself, she concluded. The novel is finished for me, but the global conversation has just begun. Linguistica's story served as the ultimate proof that in the modern age mastery is no longer a measure of time, but of focus and the will to act now. Linguistica's later years were characterized by a deep satisfaction in watching her legacy unfold. Her life's work had transcended personal achievement and transformed into a global educational movement. The principles of immersive, accelerated English acquisition that she championed became standard practice in many developing regions. Linguistica remained active as a patron of the arts and sciences, always looking for new avenues to foster global understanding. She often used her platform to host international summits focused on cross-cultural communication and collaboration. Her opening remarks at these events were always a powerful demonstration of the power of language. The greatest threat to peace is not a lack of resources, but a failure to connect and understand one another, she would say, addressing the delegates. When we master a shared lexicon, we gain the ability to see our common humanity reflected in the eyes of others. This is the ultimate aim of linguistic equity. She used metaphors and evocative language, drawing on the richness she had acquired to inspire cooperation and mutual respect. Her influence was now truly radiant, touching every corner of the globe. Linguistica's foundation partnered with UNESCO to launch a final major initiative, a free, open-source language learning platform based entirely on immersive Keytalk technology. The project was her ultimate gift to the world, ensuring that cost would never again be a barrier to rapid English mastery. She wrote the foreword to the platform's user guide, a message to the youth who would follow her path. You hold in your hands the power to shatter the barriers of the past. Do not learn passively, engage actively. Make mistakes freely, for each error is a correction in the algorithm of your mind. The world is eager for your voice. Master the language, and let your novel begin. Linguistica's novel of personal transformation was complete, but its final chapter was dedicated to the perpetuity of that gift of freedom to communicate. She was the ultimate grandmaster, a lasting symbol that the greatest success is achieved by those who choose to accelerate their own growth and then share the key with the world. Linguistica's legacy was now fully realized through the success of the Global Competence Initiative and the perpetuity of her foundation. She had moved beyond the need for personal achievement and focused solely on ensuring the continuity of her vision. Her final contributions were dedicated to solidifying the infrastructure for future generations of language learners. Linguistica's foundation partnered with major telecommunications companies to ensure that the immersive KeyTalk platform was accessible even in regions with low internet bandwidth. This technological breakthrough was her final act of educational equity, removing the last major barrier to access. She observed a graduation ceremony via live stream from a rural community in Southeast Asia, where students who had never left their village were confidently delivering speeches in flawless English. Their success was the ultimate vindication of the intensive, modern method she had risked everything to pursue. In a brief, unscripted address to the graduates, Linguistica spoke from her heart. The key to your success was not the technology itself, but your courage to believe in the speed of your own potential, she said. You have mastered English, and in doing so, you have not only opened doors for yourselves but have also strengthened the global chain of understanding. Go forth and advocate for a more just and connected world. Linguistica found true contentment in her quiet years. She spent time with her family, always speaking to her grandchildren in a mixture of her native language and the English she had worked so hard to master. She found a simple joy in the bilingual ease of their generation, a stark contrast to the struggle of her youth. Her life was a complete novel, a testament to the principle that ambition must be matched with innovation. She had proven that learning English very fast in a modern way was not only possible but necessary for the future of global equity. Her final years were spent in the zenith of a life well lived, her legacy secured in the voices of the millions she had empowered.